Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. I am the least woke man in America. Proudly the least woke man in America. There's no, oh my God, what are people going to think if I'm not woke? Will they think I'm racist? Looking over my shoulder. You know what I see? Like people who are always, and you see a lot of this in this country now, by the way. A lot over the last 5, 6 years. They look over their shoulder. And I know people have done that, a little bit in the past, but it's out of control now. I see communist China. I see the Soviet Union. I see North Korea. I don't see America. I don't see America when I see, especially when it's good people who aren't racist, who are good people, and because of left-wing bullies, they're in perpetual bunny rabbit mode. Well, we don't do bunny rabbit mode here. This is raw, unabashed truth. If you can't handle it, go somewhere else. But this is the least woke man in America podcast. Thank you. So here we are. This is a podcast I've wanted to do for a while. It's weighed heavily on me because I think it's so true. And that is, we need to think about what the Ukrainians have done for the world. Now, I'm not saying everything has gone perfect over there or that Ukrainians are perfect, but we have to think about what would have happened if back on February 24th, when the war started, if the Ukrainians had laid down and died like the Afghanis did and let the Russians win, say in 2 or 3 days like they planned, what a different world we would live in right now. Think about that. You can know for sure with Putin's personality and Putin's ego, the Russians would be in Moldova right now. And Moldova is kind of a rough country. It's a poor country. I understand all that. But because of that, the Baltic countries, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, they'd be going crazy right now. They'd be terrified. We'd be right on the verge of a major war between all of Western Europe, the NATO countries essentially, US, Canada, and Western Europe, and Russia, and some of Russia's allies. It would be a disaster. It would embolden China. And I really believe this. I really believe that if that took place, if Russia came in, beat Ukraine in 3 days, it would make Russia look so strong, and it would make the Western countries look so weak and feckless. I really think that would embolden terrorist groups, drug cartels, mafias around the world, because it would just make the wealthiest, most powerful, supposedly wealthiest, most powerful countries in the world look so weak, and that emboldens people like that. It's great. Remember middle school, how the worst kid in the class when the substitute teacher just out of control, had no fear whatsoever. That type of thing. And so I really believe the Ukrainians have done us an incredible service here. And I know some people on the right, very few, are the Tucker school mind. And Tucker's not completely wrong about some things, but I'm going to talk about the Tucker list, as I call it, in a little bit. But for the meantime, we have to appreciate what they have done here so far. And I emphasize so far because what I do with this situation when it comes to Ukraine, first of all, I don't watch anybody from the Biden administration. After the Afghanistan debacle, do you think the Ukraine-Russia war, do you think I care what Jake Sullivan has to say about the war between Russia and Ukraine? So I watch on YouTube the analysts from Generals, especially, even if it's CNN, I don't care about the station because I want to hear the substance of what they have to say. And a lot of them conclude this is far from over with, and it's in a dangerous situation because the most of the war is now shifting to the east, where the Russians have a much bigger army than the Ukrainians, and they could circle around the Ukrainians if the Russians actually start to fight the way we think of Russians fighting, even though that's been exaggerated big time. I've heard generals and intelligence people say for years that our view of the Russian army is so over-exaggerated because of Hollywood. So, but say the Russians do fight like a real army. If they ever surround the Ukrainians out east, the Ukrainians can't get back to Kyiv if they need to retreat, then we could have a disaster on our hands. Then the Russians could actually end up taking Kyiv. So the point is, this is far from over with. In my opinion, really doesn't matter. I don't pretend to be an expert, but the people who really do know what they're talking about, this is still a dangerous situation. As far as the resources, the Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Russia is a massive wheat producer. Both countries are dysfunctional right now. Both are big fertilizer producers. So there is just food and inflation repercussions, as if inflation is not tough enough already, that are still going to come from this. But in the meantime, it's so important to think about what the Ukrainians have done. But just because before this started, Putin was trying to strategically to cozy up to China, and this kind of two tough guys coming together to control the world, and kind of put their middle finger up at the Western countries, etc. And people weren't sure where that was going. I told a buddy of mine, now it reminds me of, China is like the high school girl that goes get the bad boy boyfriend so her parents and everybody could see it and think she's, so, to stand up to them and blah, blah, blah. And then she goes to a party and he's making out with somebody else and gets mad and calls her fat and she's crying and she runs back to her family. That's why I think of China. They're cozying up to Putin, goes to Ukraine, embarrasses himself. Now that he's the big tough guy, now they've come calling back, obviously, everybody else because they do need us as much as we do need them, excuse me. That's the dirty little secret. So, but also what's going on here, this embodies the way the real world works. And I mentioned on a previous podcast that I was irritated. A lot of people about Bill Maher, a lot of people when he says something pro-right, everybody says, yeah, like he's on our side. Well, it kind of irritated me. On one of his shows during the monologue, he says, well, when the first week or two, when Zelensky looked like a tough guy and they're really standing up to the Russians, he said, who knew people do love masculinity, they do love courage, they do love standing up in problems, and when there is evil in the world. And I'm like, pump the brakes here for a second, pal. All right. He was a classic liberal over the last 20 years when the defense bills were passed and signed, mainly by Republicans, that developed and paid for all the javelins, all the missiles, everything we're sending over there. Then little smart-ass remarks about, conservatives don't care about kids and single mothers and don't care about education. All they do is love tanks and killing people and yada, yada, yada. All these little digs. Now all of a sudden everybody loves Ukraine, wants Ukraine to win. All these thousands, not hundreds, thousands of pieces of equipment, thousands of missiles are being sent over there, and everybody just loves it. I'm like, okay, live in your little world. We all know, those of us living on planet Earth know the real story. So, but this embodies the world that we live in and we have always lived in. And we have always been so fortunate in this country to be protected from it. Just Google Belt and Road Initiative to see what China's doing with all these countries that build this massive road and trade route through the East, through Europe, through shipping routes and an actual physical road. They're not talking about doing it. They're actually doing it. Can you imagine trying to do something like this in the country? Just dragging environmentalists and permits and unions and you name it to try to get anything done. That's what kills me about John Kerry. It just kills me, John Kerry, and these climate nuts. They those fly in on a huge jet to these third world countries in an $800 suit. Only a Massachusetts liberal could pull this off and really sit down with someone who probably didn't even grow up with indoor electric and plumbing. Lives in sweltering heat, no air conditioning. They don't even have air conditioning a lot of the hot parts of the world. In India, there's farmers who die in the fields because of the heat. And then we fly over there, John serious face Kerry, and it's really time to talk to them about carbon emissions. Now, I am a white conservative male, so my brain doesn't do empathy and emotional intelligence. It's not designed for that. But if I did, I say, man, that is really weird and overbearing. So for Western cultures where people on welfare who don't even work live better than people in most of those countries, to really time to get serious about carbon emissions. They're still striving. They don't know anything about toxic masculinity. They don't know anything about any intersectionality. They are striving to move ahead. They see movies and stuff, how we live, and they want that. I'm not saying it's right. They back their garbage trucks up and dump them into rivers and oceans. Obviously, that stuff like that needs to be addressed. But it's a classic, who the hell do we think we are? No. You look at Putin just deciding to walk into another country. I mean, thank God it's somewhat foreign to us now. But that is the nature of the world for thousands of years. We have institutions, etc., to put up with that. Why do you think our Constitution, which has been mocked, the left never cared about the Constitution. They made fun of the Constitution until Donald Trump became president. Then they all became constitutional scholars and loved our democracy. which I was always told our democracy was racist and sexist. They loved our Constitution. They loved our democracy. And it was their job on CNN every night with a screen split 8 different ways with that Anderson Cooper and David Gergen, or as Rush used to call him, David Rodham Gergen. Oh, that serious look on their face. Chris Cuomo every night. This is very, very serious. Promoting a Russia story that was all fake. None of it was true. But, just like John Kerry, with the people who still live in mud huts, very serious about carbon emissions. Anyways, John Kerry, I know he's like a no-name now, but anyway, it just killed me because he was the guy, Donald Trump just isn't a serious man. Well, here's the difference between John Kerry takes John Kerry very, very seriously. We know that. He takes a lot of stuff no one cares about very, very seriously. Donald Trump took the American people, the American border, American oil prices very, very seriously. So he might not have met the bar with them as far as self-seriousness, but as far as what the American public takes seriously, he was there, and that's why he became president. John Kerry never did. So they never really were able to make the connection. And frankly, because of the deep, thick membrane of self-righteousness they live in and arrogance, they probably never will. So that being said, I am really, really happy for what the Ukrainians have done so far, and so should you. Again, they didn't lay down like the Afghanis. What a case study. It's just when, because the Afghanistan thing was last October? The start of February, just to contrast, to juxtapose the two and see that the will to fight is everything in this, everything. And we need to learn that forever in the future. I mean, Afghanistan shows there's no matter how much money you spend, if it's not there, it's not there. And it's so sad because, I don't know if you know this, people are literally selling their children and their kidneys. People are selling kidneys in Afghanistan right now. I just was listening to a long piece about it in the Wall Street Journal app the other day because it's so awful over there. Now, I'm not blaming Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the way we left was Joe Biden's fault. That was a national disgrace. But you have to have your George Washington. You have to have your Thomas Jefferson. You have to have your Zelensky if you're going to have a democracy. Period. You can hate them, make them slave owners. Yes, they were this, they were sexist, they were awful. I get it. If you don't have them, you don't have a democracy. And life is way worse. You're back to what I started the show with. Over each corner. Is AOC listening? Is Pelosi listening? Am I going to get sued? Am I going to get fired from my job? That's what you end up with. And most of us, myself included, have never lived with that, but we can at least study it and say, wow, we're human, just like them. That can happen here, and wake up to it. So the last thing is the Tucker list. Like I said, Tucker is disappointing a lot of people on the right because of what appears to be, and including in my opinion, it's kind of a lukewarm type attitude towards the Ukrainians winning, which has been disappointing because, okay, let me agree with Tucker on some things. Ukraine was a corrupt country before this started. They were not angels. Eastern Europe overall is a corrupt part of the world. And Zelensky probably isn't some type of angel we're making out to people. We don't need an angel right now. We need courage, which is what he's doing. And I get all that. And the big thing Tucker is 100% right about is these left-wing loons going on television shows saying, I think we should just do more. There's more that we can do. Alluding that we should be using American or European NATO air power and boots on the ground. You can't do that with Russia, who has 2,000 nuclear warheads. You can't. And so there's that part of which Tucker is right about. They don't realize how crazy they sound. And then there's the part Tucker is some right about that. There's a lot of, especially mediocre American politicians using this. Like Adam Schiff today met with Zelensky. Have you seen that? Him and Pelosi had the nerve to go over there and meet with him. The only thing good it can come from, maybe being around Zelensky, Schiff will actually get normal male testosterone levels. But rather than being Pelosi, having Pelosi walk around on a leash. But so there's that part. But back to the part with the as far as the Ukrainians and what Tucker has been talking about as far as